Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
First, Sakura crowed smugly at her rival Ino, who had clearly entered the door behind her. Looks like that big forehead is blinding you 'cause I was first. Ino growled out, the blonde glaring at Sakura as they had their usual argument over who got to sit next to Sasuke. Liar. Sakura butt foreheads with Ino. Skank. Ino growled back. You're both in the way. The voice of her love and future husband Sasuke made Sakura leap back, giving her most winning smile. I'm so sorry Ino was in your way, Sasuke-kun. Sakura bat her eyelashes at her future man-to-be. Oh, a forehead. Ino rolled her eyes as Sakura felt her own twitch in irritation. He was clearly annoyed at you. You're both. Sasuke brushed past them before pausing and frowning. Who the hell is he? Turning, she saw someone who wasn't in their class before. They were up in the open space at the top of the room for students to do some physical training and exercise before class if they were early. Unfortunately, she still knew who the idiot was. That's just Naruto. Sakura rolled his eyes. He's useless and has already failed the academy twice. My parents said he's also a menace and has a criminal record. To avoid him. If he had a record, he wouldn't be at the academy. Ino scoffed before frowning. My dad said to avoid him as well, but that was mainly given how a lot of other people in the village seem to hate him. I'm pretty sure I've seen him running away from Anbu after pranks before. Yo Ruto. The brash and eager voice of Kiba sounded from behind her as the Inazaka heir brushed past her and rushed up to the blonde who Sakura was just noticing had changed his hairstyle. It was no longer a shaggy mess but somewhat taken care of, shaved short on the sides while slightly longer on top and in the back. Sup Kiba. Naruto grinned, putting down the bow he'd been drawing and letting slack repeatedly. Mom wants to know if you're swinging by for dinner tonight. Kiba leaned against the wall by the blonde, Akamaru's tail wagging away. Dog breath. Sasuke's tone demanded attention as he approached. You know this guy? Yeah, Tem. Kiba, as usual, refused to show Sasuke the respect he deserved. He's Naruto. I guess you'll find out in a couple minutes, so saying it no won't matter, but most of our old senseis are gone now. Turns out a lot of them were sabotaging things here, which the Hokage found out after they, overreached, while screwing with Naruto last year. But I'll pass this time. Naruto nodded, drawing the bow again to his cheek, Sakura noticing his arm straining slightly from the action. Weak. Sasuke sneered, noticing the strain too. Better than you can do, Ducky. Naruto smirked at Sasuke, eyes flitting to her future husband's hair. You insolent little. Sasuke glared, snatching the bow and trying to draw it, barely able to pull the string back. The hell is this? It's a training bow. Naruto takes it back, showing something carved onto it. Resistance seals that let me make it harder and harder to draw as I get used to the old pull. Helps improve my arm strength. Hearing the warning bell, Sakura rushed to a seat, Ino taking the one behind her as they both tried to coax Sasuke to sit next to them. Sasuke sat in the corner by himself. Sume. Standing outside the academy, Sume let out a grin when she smelt her brats approaching. About time you lot showed up. She quipped. Why, that bell rang a whole minute ago. What can I say? Traffic was terrible. Naruto gave her an impish grin, sharing a fist bump with Kiba, the two having become thick as thieves since she found them in the forest and began to have Naruto come over regularly. I see. Sume shook her head ruefully before leaning down to give Akamaru a scritch behind the ear. And were you looking after these two for me today, Akamaru? The puppy yipped eagerly. I'm glad to hear it. Straightening up, and blasting killing intent as the various parents picking up kids who were glaring at her brats, Sume gave a gesture. Come on brats, it's roast boar tonight. Sume nodded as they set off back to the house where Hannah should be back by now. Yes. Kiba looked pumped to get his favorite dish while Naruto just knew he needed the meat and vegetables. His protests had, thankfully, died when he started growing thanks to proper diet. So, how was your first day back? Sume asked as they continued on to the Inazaka compound, wanting to make sure the remaining old teachers as well as the new ones hadn't tried the same shit the removed ones had. Boring. Kiba groaned, it just going over all the stuff they left out from the lectures before. I'm pretty sure the Hokage was hiding there somewhere though. Whenever it looked like a teacher might be about to leave something out, they suddenly got pale, started sweating, and rapidly changed course. Tomorrow we're going to be taking a review quiz over what they said today and then going outside to test physical skill. Naruto added, Kiba perking up at the thought of that, her boy always more brawn than brain. It was funny seeing Sasuke Tem get pissed off when he couldn't use your training bow. Kiba snickered towards Naruto, said tool strapped on the blonde's back. Oh, Sume looked intrigued by that, curious at how Naruto's strength had improved since she found him. Yeah, I've been noticing lately that I heal really fast. Naruto frowned, expression vacant as he tried to puzzle out the reason why. It's really helpful for training, but I have no clue why it happens. Dude, don't look a gift wolf in the mouth. Kiba chided his friend, just be glad you got to show up that self-centered prick and be happy. Let me see it. Sume gestured and for the bow and, upon being past the weapon, easily drew the string. She was a Jonin and had the strength to match that title, but the bow still took more effort than she expected. She was sure there were even some full genin at this point who would be unable to draw it back. Good progress. She nodded, passing the weapon back, but how's your aim coming? I've consistently hitting the targets now. Naruto nodded proudly, and I'm usually able to make at least 1 or 2 bullseyes per 10 shots now. How about a little training incentive, boys? Sume grinned, ruffling the duo's hair as they passed the compound gate. Kiba, if you get a C or higher on 3 tests or quizzes in a row you pass. Naruto, if you can get up to 5 bullseyes out of every 10 3 times in a row, then you pass. Once each of you passes, I'll take you to a shop I know to get you both a piece of proper shinobi gear. Whether that's a melee weapon, a tool, or some armor. At her promise, she saw the blaze of determination in their eyes, the two boys always eager to compete even if it was against themselves or a challenge set before them. You're on. The duo shouted out in unison. That's what I like to hear. Sume laughed happily as they got to the house. Now let's get inside and eat before Hannah takes it all for herself. I heard that. Her daughter's voice carried out from the kitchen. I don't hear a denial. Sume smirked as they moved to the kitchen to eat together once again. Sarutobi, head held high, and expression neutral, Sarutobi stepped into the office for the head of the torture and interrogation department. The moment he stepped inside, Anko, Inoichi, and Ibiki snapped to attention. Report. Sarutobi commanded as he entered, gazing at the notes from the interrogations of those sabotaging his potential genin. It's bad, sir. Ibiki scowled darkly. The academy head was in on this and helped push through any changes he wanted with the help of the civilian council backing him. They removed any mention of the Uzumaki, moved focus to theory over practical, put more and more emphasis on clans they approved of in the histories, and lowered the kunoichi-only classes to flower crown making and tea parties. Then there's what they did to the Uzumaki kid directly. Taijutsu, taught incorrectly. Kunai and shuriken throwing, taught incorrectly and poor quality items provided. They taught him the henge wrong, but from what I hear he figured that one out on his own. A substitute was there when they first went over the substitution, which is why he has that. For clones they were aware that he had too much chakra to do the basic bunshin, not to mention they were refusing to teach him proper chakra control. There's a habit of marking correct answers wrong on written tests, punishing him when others act out and more. What's worse is we don't know if they did it to anyone else. We were only able to get this out of them as we knew they were sabotaging the Uzumaki kid already. It'll take years to figure out how far back the sabotage goes and start fixing things. Damn. Sarutobi ran a tired hand down his face, I'll put out word to the various clans to subtly check on their members who graduated in recent years and have some of the trustworthy Chunin offer, tutoring, to genin and academy students. I don't want word to spread to the other villages of this situation. Understood, Hokage-sama. The three saluted him in one. And you're sure the ones left are clean? Sarutobi gave a serious look to the trio. Dude, Kiba whispered to Naruto eagerly under his breath as the trio entered the shinobi-focused shop. It had taken a few months for the two to both complete her requirements, but they'd accomplished it and now she was owning up to her part of the deal. I know. Naruto was just as giddy, the two taking off to look at what the store had on offer while she stood by the door, watching her idiots in fond bemusement. Sup Higurashi. Sume grinned to the store owner behind the counter. Hello Sume. The tired-looking retired Chunin nodded, the brat's yours. Damn straight they're mine. Sume grinned wider at that, flashing her canine teeth at the man. I promised the kids if they hit a threshold in their training, then I'd get them some proper gear. That won't be a problem, right? The last part was said with just the hint of a growl to make it clear how displeased she'd be if he caused trouble for her blonde dumbass. Relax, I know the difference between scroll and kunai. Higurashi waved off her threat, using the expression that those in the know about the Kyuubi had taken to stating they didn't blame Naruto for it. Any idea what they'll want? Honestly, not a clue. Sume laughed. I'm eager to see what my idiots'll pick though. Well, Uzumaki seems to be gravitating towards the swords. Higurashi snorted amused. Not a real surprise there, is it? Not really, no. Sume smiled in fond amusement at the kid she'd all but taken in at this point. A quick glance through the area let her see, much to her own surprise, that her son wasn't looking at weapons. Instead, he was looking at defensive gear. Not trying to get something to make things more deader. Sume leaned on her son's head as she approached, her grin playful as she looked at the jacket he'd been considering. I've been working on my taijutsu more. Kiba admitted, but Naruto and I were talking. He's worried about me getting hurt on a mission given I focus more on offense than anything else. She'd have to thank that boy later for helping her son think like this. The two were good influences on each other, the brothers each one needed in their lives. It feels thicker than it looks. Sume noted as she pinched the material of the long jacket, the collar lined with fur. The tag said it was lightly armor padded. Kiba nodded. Well, I kinda hoped Naruto could add more seals to it to make it even better. Oh, she was curious at that. I saw him do those resistance seal thingies on his training bow and wondered if he could do some other seals on my coat to help training. Kiba grinned, +1s to make it more durable and defensive, and keep me from overheating if I wear it in the summer. I see you're thinking ahead. Sume's proud grin was genuine as she saw how the two boys were helping each other. Each one had the utmost confidence in the other, saw the best in the other's skills and encouraged that. If Hana wasn't so much older, she'd be tempted to try and set the girl and Naruto up together. Glancing over, she noted that Naruto had seemed to decide on a katana, one she noted didn't have any sort of seals already put onto it. She guessed he planned to do that himself. You boys ready? She grinned as Naruto and Kiba walked up to the counter, putting their choices on the counter for Higurashi to ring up. Yep. Naruto was practically grinning as she saw his hands twitching, miming writing in the air as the kid was probably already planning out what sort of seals and seal arrays to put onto these things. She couldn't wait to see the result. Sasuke. Sitting in his classroom, Sasuke's eyes flit about from person to person as he waited for the one, technically two, he needed to speak with. This year at the academy had been so far from the ones before it that it almost felt like his education had been started over from the beginning instead of the continuation this final year was meant to be. And it all went back to one person. Someone he barely even knew existed before the school year started. Naruto Uzumaki. The histories he knew were wrong. The teachers he'd trusted were corrupt. And those he'd passed off as weak, as unimportant, were rapidly growing stronger. Seeing those he needed to speak to finally arrive, Sasuke grit his teeth and approached the duo of Kiba Inazaka and Naruto Uzumaki. The two had been wearing new gear in recent weeks, with the blonde Uzumaki always scratching out ideas in a journal, so he knew that Uzumaki could help him. Uzumaki. Sasuke forced himself to stay polite, knowing these two weren't nearly as weak as he'd thought before, not after seeing how fast they'd grown when the teachers were forced to actually teach. Need something, Ducky? The blonde tilted his head, still using that nickname he'd saddled Sasuke with day one. I wanted to ask for a weapon. He admitted, hating how weak he felt asking others for help, a sealed weapon. I need to get stronger. Not just gonna ask the teachers. Inazaka raised an eyebrow at him challengingly. The dog boy had mellowed out since Uzumaki showed up on the scene, but still had pride to rival Sasuke's own. Those fools. Sasuke didn't bother to hide his derision as he scoffed, now that I've seen how much they failed before. How they're having to be forced to actually do the responsibility they'd accepted at the academy. I wouldn't trust them to teach a toddler to tie their shoes unsupervised. Fair. Inazaka seemed pleased by that statement. All offer compensation. Sasuke did his best to negotiate, not used to people not just giving him what he wanted. This was too important to let his pride hinder him, though. The new history lessons had made it clear just how effective Uzumaki's seals were, and if his classmate was even half as skilled as the examples he'd read about, then he needed this. I can think on ideas. Uzumaki nodded, pencil spinning rapidly between his fingers as the blonde let his mind race. Yeah, I think I have something good. Something that would only be able to be used to its full potential by an Uchiha with their Sharingan. I just need to know a few things about how it functions to know if my idea is even possible. If it is, and if I make this weapon for you, then I want to be able to choose some jutsu from the Uchiha library. That was expected, admittedly. The Uchiha Jutsu library was the largest in Konoha given how many abilities and techniques his clan had copied and recorded over the years. I don't have mine active yet, Sasuke admitted with a scowl. There was a chance that Uzumaki's question could be answered just from records, but also a chance it couldn't. We could always ask that scarecrow-looking mother. Inazaka pipped in as Sasuke and the blonde Uzumaki looked at the dog boy in confusion. What? You two hadn't heard about him? The feral taijutsu user looked surprised. Mom mentioned him a few times. Apparently, he used to be the student of the fourth Hokage. During the last war he was on a mission and lost his eye. His teammate was injured and dying and had their third partner transplant one of his Sharingan into the half-blinded one. The guy's still active in the corp and has apparently copied over 1,000 jutsu with it. I could ask Gigi if he could arrange a test. Naruto grinned. Should only take a few minutes, so I can't see it being an issue. If this works though, then you'll have swords that'll be perfect for you. Uzumaki's grin was wild, full of energy and excitement at the chance to create. Sasuke couldn't deny he was eager to see what the blonde would be able to create. Frowning, Hiruzen looked over the various test results from the academy graduation exam. Of the 21 students, 19 had passed the test to be assigned onto a genin team. The clan heirs, several civilian-born, and Naruto. Given the number, the teachers had decided to recommend that Naruto be held back and not given a team, as he has shown a history of failing at shinobi arts before, and the number of teams where teamwork would be possible is limited. The civilian-born all still openly treated him like a monster due to the influence of their parents, which would cause issues if any were on his team. Then there the team requests he'd received from various jonin or council members. Kurenai Yuhi had requested Kiba Inazaka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame for her to train as a tracker team. Kakashi had asked to teach Sasuke Uchiha as well as Naruto Uzumaki, with many on the council requesting that he train Sasuke and leave Naruto unmentored. His son had asked for a team and many on the council had put forth to have a second iteration of the Ino Shika Cho trio trained. Of all those, the only one he felt was remotely feasible was Kurenai's, and that was just for the team composition. He was still a little hesitant to let her teach after what happened with the Kurama girl. But, then again, she has been mentoring young Hinata for some time. He sighed and signed off on that team as well as 3 teams composed of civilian-born applicants. And then there were 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamiki, Sakura Haruno, and Sai, no last name. The last one practically screamed of Danzo's influence. A young boy, orphaned, and put into the academy partway through the final year but blowing through the various tests. A young man who never seemed to show any emotions unless pushed. It was Root all over again, but he didn't have any proof. Pulling over the reports, written by the teachers he'd placed at the academy personally and knew he could trust, he started to read, skipping over Naruto's as he was already aware of the boy's ability. Sasuke Uchiha, high scores across the board. Driven to the point of obsession with getting stronger. Started year with poor teamwork and social skills but has begun to spend more time with classmates who he feels would help him get stronger. Needs a sensei who can help him grow but won't kowtow to counsel or genin demands. Shikamaru Nara, highest academic and tactical scores. Third lowest passing physical score. Shows unusually intense amount of Nara laziness. Seems to believe he can outthink any problem without having to train his body. Needs a firm-handed sensei who can help him develop proper work ethic. Ino Yamanaka, middling academic scores, second lowest passing physical score. Obsessed over male classmate Sasuke Uchiha, often heard arguing with other female classmates about him. Seems to think he would be able to save her if she was ever in trouble, so focusing on dieting to look pretty has taken higher priority to her overtraining. Needs a firm-handed sensei to bring out potential and correct bad habits. Choji Akamiki, middling academic and physical scores. Prone to complaining if he's made to put down his food and focus on training. Seems to believe he doesn't have to try too hard so long as he has strategies of one Shikamaru Nara. Needs a sensei who can motivate him and improve low self-esteem while fixing poor work ethic. Sakura Haruno, high theory and academic scores. Lowest of the physical ability passing scores. Obsessed over male classmate Sasuke Uchiha, often heard arguing with other female classmates about him. Seems to think he would be able to save her if she was ever in trouble, so focusing on dieting to look pretty has taken higher priority to her overtraining. Excellent chakra control but very small reserves. Needs a firm-handed sensei to bring out potential and correct bad habits. Sai. Perfect academic scores, high physical scores. Low teamwork scores as he shows an inability to properly interact with his peers. Multiple fights have broken out when he gave another student an insulting nickname thinking it made them friends. Needs a sensei who can help improve his personal skills. Kakashi would be horrible for any of them. He sighed as he finished reading the reports. The man had failed so many students, not to mention his chronic lateness and other issues. No, he wasn't letting Kakashi near any of these kids, especially with the ongoing need to correct faulty education they'd already had. A firm-handed sensei, huh? He looked at the reports before growing a mischievous grin he'd to his grave swear he never got from Naruto. Oh, this just might work. As he worked on writing notices for the 2 full teams, he sent one more notice. He was sure they'd say yes, but it wouldn't hurt to make sure. Oh, this will be most interesting. Hiruzen snickered to himself, sure he'd made the correct team assignments. Naruto. Morning Kiba. Morning Ducky. Naruto nodded to the 2 prideful idiots he considered his friends. Dobi. Sasuke grumbled, even as the twin swords Naruto had enhanced for him were on the Uchiha's back. In all honesty, Naruto was used to him acting like a Tsunere cat 24/7. Sup dude. Kiba grinned, grinning like a happy golden retriever while Akamaru barked eagerly. So, who do you think will be on a team with who? Naruto asked as he sat by the 2, tuning out Ino and Sakura arguing which of them would be teamed up with Sasuke due to true love, and all that other nonsense the delusional duo like to spout. Morning everyone. Uruka-sensei walked into the classroom with a nod, a stack of files in the man's hand, probably the team assignments. I have to say I'm incredibly proud of all of you for graduating. You've trained hard and are ready to become full genin of Konohagakure. I'll be reading out your team assignments, and once they're all stated, you'll be free to disperse until lunch. I'd encourage you to spend that time with your teammates to be so you can get used to each other if you're not already close friends. You're to come back after the lunch period to meet your senseis. Understood. Yes, sensei. Most of the class nodded in one as Aruka nodded and began calling out teams. The first three were all composed of civilian-born ninja who Naruto didn't really know that well given how they ignored him whenever they could. Team 7. Aruka continued. Sakura Haruno, the pink-haired harpy, perked up, batting her eyelashes at Sasuke, who grimaced. Ino Yamanaka, the blonde, started trying to outdo Sakura, and Choji Akamaiki. Jonin sensei is Anko Mitarashi. Naruto could swear he could hear the sound of shattering glass as the two girls' fantasies were destroyed around them. What? Shikamaru leaned forward confused, but I thought we'd be a new Ino Shika Cho trio. The Hokage stated he felt that would be a poor idea. Uruka shook his head. Your fathers are all famous for their teamwork, yes, but that means most of their strategies are known. People might still struggle against them, but you three are nowhere near as strong yet. That same formation would just make you three predictable and easy to defeat, a liability we can't risk in the field. Makes sense. Sasuke grunted, doing his best to appear cool and aloof even if Naruto was positive that the Uchiha was crowing with joy on the inside to not be on a team with any fangirls. Team 8. Uruka continued, will be Kiba Inazaka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame. Jonin sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. Way to go, bro. Naruto grinned at Kiba, who had a happy expression at being on a team with his crush. Team 9 is still in circulation. Uruka pulled out the second to last file, so Team 10 will be Sasuke Uchiha, Shikamaru Nara, and Sai. Jonin sensei is Sarutobi Asuma, the son of the Hokage. Sasuke blinked in surprise, all three of them expecting that Kakashi person to train Sasuke given the Sharingan. Wait, what about Naruto? Kiba frowned, noting that everyone else was already on a team and Naruto's name still hadn't been called. I was getting to him, Kiba, don't worry. Uruka assured as he opened the last file. Naruto, as there weren't enough graduates to make a final team, the Hokage reached out to a Jonin who agreed to take you on as an apprentice. You might acquire teammates should other teams have members graduate or drop from the corp. But until that time you are to be the personal student of Sume Inazaka. With that, Uruka released them all to wander the village until lunch. Hey guys, want to eat together? Kiba looked at his teammates and Sasuke's. I got some of my dad's muffins. Naruto perked up at that, stomach rumbling eagerly. Kiba's dad may not be a shinobi, but the man both the best baker Naruto had ever met and the only nurse who didn't make his hospital visits hell. Thank you. Hinata stuttered as Shino gave a silent nod. What a pain. Shikamaru grumbled, running a hand down his face, but I know my mom would just complain if I don't eat with you lot. Naruto noticed Sai had silently come over, perking up slightly at the mention of muffins. HNNN. Sasuke grumbled at the invitation he hadn't asked for. Stop complaining, ya grumpy Tsunere. Kiba didn't even bat an eye as he brought out a thermos. I brought tomato soup too. Fine. Sasuke relented, snagging the thermos as he took a sip. I'm surprised they didn't have you and Naruto on a team under your mom, Kiba. Sasuke commented as the seven walked out of the academy to go get lunch, the Ichiraku ramen stand decently close to the academy. Probably worried about favoritism or something. Kiba shrugged. They can't make that sort of complaint about Naruto though, since the civilian council wouldn't let mom adopt him. What? Hinata spoke up, white eyes wide in surprise at that little tidbit. The civilian council really doesn't like me. Naruto shrugged. Can't say it isn't mutual at this point. I'm just more surprised that they didn't have Sharingan Kakashi teaching Ducky here. Think it's because I don't have my Sharingan yet. Sasuke frowned, that tidbit still rubbing Naruto's friend the wrong way. I doubt it. Naruto shook his head, everyone knows it'll manifest eventually. I'd say it's probably more an issue with that Kakashi guy himself. So instead, you're being trained by the son of the Hokage, someone who'd once guarded the daimyo himself. Seriously. Shikamaru blinked in surprise, having not heard that tidbit. Anko kicked open the door to the Bratz classroom, her face split in a wide, near feral grin. Team 7, fall in. She saw the three brats she had to whip into shape staring at her in shock. More importantly though, they hadn't moved to fall in. Oh dear. Her grin became sinister as she leaked some killing intent, observing how a chunk of the genin didn't seem affected by the minuscule amount she let out, but her own brats were trembling. It seems you three are hard of hearing. I said, Team 7, fall in. The three hastily started scrambling to the front of the room. Anko, please don't traumatize the genin. Uruka sighed, the Chunin Academy teacher looking beyond tired. Make me scrub. Anko grinned, her thumbs tugging at her shiny new Jonin flak jacket. I outrank you. She looked at then three terrified rookies. Two rake-thin girls who had been, dieting and one Akamaiki who was rather on the short side and hadn't stopped eating chips since she entered. Welp, she had work to do. Alright kiddos, welcome to hell. Population, you. I'm going to work you three into the ground till you're ready to kick and take names. First test. I'm just a mud clone, the real me is waiting for you at training ground 7. How fast you three get there will let me know how intense bootcamp is. Won't that be fun? She gave a grin as she dissolved, memories going back to the original. Across town in training ground 7, the real her perked up, dango stick between her teeth as she eagerly awaited her brat's arrival. One boring hour and a half later, the three panting brats finally arrived. Damn it runts, what took you so long? She scowled, you took so long I ate all the dango I was going to share. Choji looked ready to cry at that. It was, so far. Sakura panted, she and Ino having to lean on Choji for support. The boy was somewhat out of breath too, but nowhere near as bad as the girls. And we got lost. Choji looked sheepish, even as he continued to stuff his face with chips as he talked. And you didn't think to ask Haruka where training ground 7 was if you didn't know yourself? Anko raised an eyebrow and could swear she heard crickets as the three blinked owlishly at her. Sweet Cammy, we have a lot of work to do. She facepalmed before standing up. Alright kiddos, normally you'd still have to pass another test to officially become genin, but I don't give a flying about tradition, so instead you get bootcamp. Another test. Sakura blinked confused, but, we passed the exam. You passed the basic exam to weed out those who have no current hope of being genin. Anko shook her head. Typically the teams are then tested by their senseis to see if they get trained as genin or kicked back to the academy. But the way I see it, if you have the potential to pass the academy, then anything else can be fixed with training. Plus, unlike the bastard who trained me, I don't believe in abandoning my students. Who was your teacher? Choji looked confused even as he finished his current bag of chips. Orochimaru. Anko scowled, glad these three at least recognized the name given their expressions. It was back before anyone knew the up shit he did. I didn't even know. But more importantly, do you three know why I was chosen to be your sensei? They shook their heads confused, because I'm a tough bitch who won't care when you cry. She grinned as they looked horrified at how she described herself. Choji. She pointed at the soul boy who snapped to attention, thankfully too terrified now to resume eating. Your file showed you have a decent grasp on your family jutsu, plus while you aren't standing out in a good way for scores, you weren't failing either. You do however tend to complain about being made to stop eating to train, and rely on others to do all your thinking for you. So, first rule for these training sessions is no eating unless I give the okay. You can train your clan jutsu with your clan so you can get the calories needed for them then. I'll be teaching you other things to make sure you're more well-rounded. The boy was crying now at being told no snack breaks. Sakura. She moved on to the pinky. You have high academic scores and nothing else going for you. But I have really good chakra control. Sakura protested, sticking a leaf to her arm as if that would prove it. Kid, your chakra control is so good because you barely have enough chakra to fill up a thimble. Anko deadpanned, not to mention you're as thin as a beanpole. No, you need to learn to toughen up and not expect some boy to come in and save you, so you don't have to work. First rule for you is no more dieting. I'll be giving you a list of the bare minimum of food you're supposed to eat daily and send it back home to your parents. If I find out that you aren't using it, then there will be consequences. Am I clear? But I have to keep my figure. Sakura whined, looking absolutely pitiful. The you think shinobi and kunoichi do? Anko gaped at the little idiot. Dieting is for civilians who don't have an active lifestyle. As a kunoichi, if you need to lose weight, you can train to burn it off. Plus, if you want a seductive figure, to get a man's attention, you want some fat on your chest so you aren't flat as a board. The girl looked particularly outraged at that as Anko turned to Ino. Alright, Blondie, same dieting rule as her. I'm honestly surprised your dad let you get away with dieting. Anko planned to have words with her coworker. As things stand, you three are some of the weaker ones to pass that test, especially compared to others from prior years. But I plan to break you down again and again till you're ready to get up and be badass. Kiba, Team 8, with me. Kiba noted Hinata perk up as a tall woman with dark hair and a dress made of, were those bandages? Shaking off his confusion, he started moving the second she said his team name, following her along with Hinata and Shino, sending a wave to his friends over his shoulder as he went. At least she seems less profane than the last teacher to arrive. Shino comments as the three hastily follow the woman Kiba remembered hearing was some sort of a genjutsu master. Kei Kurenai-sensei is really very nice. Hinata assured them, IPP promise. Kiba was positive that he saw his sensei straighten up a bit at that as they continued to walk till they got to a place marked as Training Ground 8. Alright Genin, I am Kurenai Yuhi. The woman stared them down, expression tight. Kiba recognized someone who was doing everything they could to look stern and commanding. His mom said at least half the clan went through that phase once they hit puberty. Will we be having a secondary test now, sensei? Kiba asked as he stood by his new teammates, silently praying he didn't do anything to look stupid in front of Hinata. You know about that. Kurenai lost her serious expression from the surprised confusion. Inazaka senses. He explained, wiggling his ears and nose as he did so, I've overheard those sent back for the special remedial classes after failing the second test every year. Your senses are that sharp then? Kurenai looked pleased, but no. I'm well aware of the kind of team I want to train and specifically requested you three for that. You're being trained to be a tracker team given your senses, Shino's bugs, and Hinata's eyes. Any other questions? Are we going to be learning anything outside of basics and more tracking? Kiba shifted, awkwardly. I was still making plans on that front. Why? Kurenai narrowed her eyes as he gulped. Kiba knew he wasn't the smartest, but he wanted to impress Hinata and he figured the best way he could do that would be to become the strongest shinobi he could. Thankfully Naruto was a mad genius and helped him brainstorm. I heard that you're the best at genjutsu in the village. Kiba looked to the side awkwardly, and I wanted to know if you could teach me some. I know a lot of genjutsu use other mediums, so I wondered if I could use my pheromones or something to have a genjutsu space around me. Just something to give me an extra intimidation factor when I'm fighting. That is a most interesting idea, Kiba. Shino nodded, tilting his head at Kiba. I wonder if I could have a genjutsu transferred through one of my bugs biting their target. Oh, I'm gonna like training you kids. Kurenai grinned wide. Thanks, sensei. He grinned before his eyes widened. Oh shit, almost forgot. He hastily rummaged in his bag before passing the genjutsu jonin a bag. My dad made muffins for me and my friends to share with our teams. I saved you one. Some of the other Inazaka guys made fun of him for doing things like that, but Kiba saw his parents as he grew up. His mom picked his dad not because he was some super strong badass, but because he made her happy. Because his dad was nice and smart. Kiba wanted to be more like that so Hinata would like him the way he liked her. Sasuke. Alright, Team 10 is he okay? Asuma-sensei walked into the classroom but trailed off when he noted Sai, who was staring off vacantly into space. He just had a muffin. Sasuke shrugged, tossing a bag with one to the Jonin. These laced with something. The Jonin, who smelled like ash smoke, looked at the treat warily. No, but he gets this way whenever he gets anything remotely sweet. Seems to last longer whenever it's from Kiba's old man. Sasuke snorted, still baffled by that bizarre fact. Okay then. Asuma-sensei shook his head as he took a bite of the baked good. Tasty. Anyway, you three, follow me. I want to go over the training plan I have in mind for you lot. Sasuke nodded, giving a sharp tug to pull Sai to his feet as he followed the son of the Hokage. Time to see if the man lived up to the hype in his family name. To start with, all three of you have vastly different strengths, weaknesses, and skill sets. Asuma spoke up when they got to training ground 10, so collective training will mostly be on the basics. I have enough chakra for stable clones, so we'll alternate between group training over basics and chakra control, or more specialized training for your skills. Afternoons will be spent taking missions. What will our specific training entail? Sai, who'd come down from his sugar trip, asked in his usual emotionless tone. I'll start with yours since you asked. Asuma grinned. To start with, I've heard about your ink jutsu, the academy said you like using. I'll be doing what I can to add seal knowledge to your repertoire. But more than that, you'll be given lessons about acting. I am unsure of the point of such training. Sai frowned, puzzled. Kid, shinobi work is often about blending in to gather intel. Asuma explained, your mannerisms stick out like a sore thumb. So, I'm going to be teaching you how to better read people and also how to blend in so they don't remember you. Helps stay inconspicuous. I see. Understood, sensei. Sai bowed before stepping back. Glad to hear it. Asuma grinned, the man seemingly pretty easygoing even if Sasuke was noting the various scars and other signs of a history of combat. Shikamaru, you're next. Your intellect and strategic ability is quite impressive and something to commend. Your physical abilities, on the other hand, are on the lacking side. For you, I plan to focus on increasing your strength, speed, stamina, and chakra reserves. Fire jutsu training is also planned so you can cast more shadows for your family style. You can learn those with your clan. And me. Sasuke straightened, curious what the man would have to say. Your clan are known to be jacks if not masters of all trades, kid. Asuma grinned, your ability to copy damn near any jutsu makes versatility the name of the game where an Uchiha is concerned. That said, I'm aware your Sharingan isn't activated yet, so your focus for now will primarily be the basics of the 5 elements and other shinobi arts. Give you a starting point to get your body used to doing them. It'll help you use and master the things you copy. There's a bit more, but I'll save that for a moment. The man made a hand sign as 2 clones appeared, leading Shikamaru and Sai off. What else is there? Sasuke demanded, surprised that the man hadn't asked about his swords. Well, I know your swords need your Sharingan to work. Asuma shrugged, likely noting Sasuke's expression. My old man mentioned that once. But no, the big thing I want to talk about is waking up your Sharingan. I don't know if you were old enough to be made aware of this before that night, but I'm aware of how to trigger it. Sasuke's eyes snapped open wide at that. What? How? I had a friend from your clan, Shisui. Asuma gave a sad grin at that. He mentioned it once. To activate the Sharingan, it involves feeling a powerful emotion in regard to someone precious to them. Shisui said most of the time it's from feelings of grief or loss. But it can be positive too, like the determination to save one close to you or to be reunited with a loved one. In point of fact, I'm wondering if your Sharingan actually was activated that night but is just repressed. You were young, so your chakra coils might not have been able to help support a full awakening. I have an appointment scheduled at the hospital with a trained medic nin. They're going to be doing some tests to see if that's the case and help you get it triggered fully. I could have my Sharingan. Sasuke wanted to demand that they go now. His eyes were the proof of who he was. The only thing he had that tied him to his family. It was more than just power. He needed the tether. He needed them. Even if I'm wrong, I'll do what I can to help you. Asuma grinned. We know positive emotions work, so maybe pride in one's friends. I know you hang out with the Inazaka and Uzumaki boys, so, if need be, I'll arrange some joint missions. Shisui was a friend of mine and one of the best shinobi I ever met. I'm going to make you even better. Naruto. Hey Squirt. Sume grinned as she stepped into the room to collect him, the others having already left. Yo. Naruto grinned, putting up the resistance bow he'd been training with in the back. About time you got here. Best teacher, so I had to arrive last, you know how it is. The woman gave a grin as she waved a hand flippantly. Come on, walk and talk. So, how's this whole apprentice thing gonna work? Naruto asked as he finally left the academy for what was hopefully the last time. I focus on training you and we join other teams as needed for their missions, given it's just us. I'll probably have you use shadow clones to blitz through a bunch of D ranks for the first couple of days. Gets them out of the way and lets us start doing the fun stuff. Oh, I'm so rubbing that in Kiba's face. Naruto snickered, not to mention how Sasuke would react. Boys. Sume snorted, ruffling his hair as he tried, and failed, to bat her hand away, but yeah, for the most part it'll just be me helping put you through your paces. I'll save teamwork stuff till you get teammates, whenever that is. So that's it then. Naruto was surprised but figured he really shouldn't be. He'd been training with the Inazaka clan for about a year now, it really was just a continuation for him. Not quite. Sume sighed as Naruto noted she seemed tense. There's a secret you deserve to know and the Hokage is finally going to tell you. I've been pushing for it to happen earlier, but he was stubborn about it and I didn't feel like violating an S-class law. S-class? Naruto's eyes were bulging. What sort of law is that? What secret could I even be tied to? Eyes blurred with unshed tears, Naruto breathed heavily, throwing punch after punch against a training dummy. He could hear wood splintering underneath the straw, feeling the skin of his knuckles starting to split and drip blood against the target of his venting. There was no technique, no form, only trying to push out every ounce of his rage. Naruto. Hearing a confused voice, Naruto whirled around, spotting a girl with brown hair done up in buns. Tenten. He recognized her after a minute from his class the last year with Mizuki. She looked about to comment on his form before she noticed his expression and the bloody knuckles. Holy. Are you alright? She hurried over, pulling out some gauze as she wrapped his knuckles, Naruto himself too stunned to bother protesting or saying it wasn't necessary. I'll be fine. Naruto gave a strained chuckle, wincing at the look Tenten gave him for that. This doesn't look fine, Naruto. Tenten frowned before glancing up, noting the shinobi headband on his forehead. Wanna talk about it? She sounded awkward, but he couldn't blame her. While they'd never had issues with each other at the academy, they'd never been all that close either. It's nothing. Naruto tried to wave it off again. I just found out who my parents were. Found out a few things I'd never known. Tenten thankfully didn't ask who his parents were. She didn't press the issue, just continued to silently bandage his hands. Well, I see you got your headband. Tenten gave him a grin as she tried to change the topic to something more positive. Yeah, once the Hokage cleared house at least. Naruto kept himself from wincing. It felt weird not calling the Hokage Gigi, but he wasn't sure if he could call him that for a while. He understood why the old man had keep quiet about the Kyuubi, about his parents, but it still hurt. Cleared house. Tenten blinked in confusion. You didn't hear about that? Naruto looked surprised but shrugged it off. A lot of the teachers at the academy and even the headmaster was sabotaging the curriculum and got caught. They were even changing grades. So that's why Guy Sensei doubled down on training. Tenten had a look of realization as she finished bandaging up his knuckles. I never found out who your team was. Naruto flexed his fingers, feeling his rapid healing already taking effect underneath the white gauze. My teammates are Neji Hyuga and Rock Lee. Tenten grinned before noticing Naruto's scowl of distaste. My condolences. Naruto didn't feel Tenten deserved that as a team. I know Neji's a bit stuck up, but he's not that bad. Tenten tried to assure him only to look confused once more when he shook his head. I was apologizing at you being forced to be on a team with someone like Lee who only graduated thanks to nepotism and the teachers not liking me. Naruto clarified. You'd best explain and quickly. That is my teammate you're throwing accusations at. Tenten's eyes narrowed. Tenten, you remember the academy requirements to graduate. How important the 3 base jutsu are to pass, and yet he can't do any of them. He could only access taijutsu, and he wasn't good at that at all back at the academy. He only passed because your teacher asked for him to be passed and put on his team. A teacher who looks like an older version of Lee. But you said they passed him because they didn't like you. Tenten floundered. I was the best at the henge in our year. I could do the substitution flawlessly. While I wasn't taught taijutsu properly, my stamina was the best at the academy as I was consistently outrunning and hiding from Anbu after my pranks. Naruto laid out each point, and with every remark he saw Tenten's resistance to his idea breaking down further and further. But the academy teachers hated me because of something stupid the civilian council used me as a scapegoat for. Lee passed while I was failed, Mizuki lying to me and saying if I spent a week alone in the forest of death, he'd pass me. Tenten's eyes bulged out at that little tidbit, recognizing the name of the dangerous training ground. I don't know what to think about all this. Tenten looked torn, and Naruto felt a little guilty about breaking her view of her team, but he'd rather she be prepared to train harder to compensate than just trust in Lee's ability. Maybe he did get better with a teacher, but Naruto wouldn't believe it till he saw it. Still though, he found talking to her helped take his mind off what the Hokage had told him. So, they kept up the conversation. Talking about their goals, what shinobi arts they focused on, tips for accuracy and seals. They only stopped when they noticed it growing late, both of them splitting off to head to their homes. Tenten, hey there kiddo. Hearing her dad's voice, Tenten was roused from her thoughts, looking up at her father where he sat behind the counter of the weapon shop. He quickly noticed her conflicted expression, eyes narrowing in focus. What happened? He demanded, quickly flipping the shop sink to close to focus on her. I ran into an old classmate, Naruto. Tenten rubbed her arm awkwardly. Uzumaki. Hearing her dad recognize his name, Tenten frowned, remembering Naruto mentioning how the civilian council used him as a scapegoat for something. Yeah, Dad, what did the civilian council blame him for? Tenten asked, narrowing her eyes when her dad choked on his own spit. I can't tell you, Tenten. He sighed, holding up a hand when she got ready to protest. Can't, not won't. All I can say is that there's an S-class law involved in the matter. The only ones who can tell you without violating it are the Hokage himself or Naruto. I can say that his summarization of the civilian council using him as a scapegoat is an accurate one. Kid doesn't deserve the shit he goes through. He also said that my teammate Lee only passed because the academy hated him, and that Guy Sensei asked for him. He also says he thinks Lee is Guy's secret kid. Tenten commented as her dad blinked in confusion. Wait, I've seen your team. You're telling me that Lee kid is trying to say he isn't related to Guy? Quote, quote. Naruto. Head down and lost in thoughts, Naruto barely registered where he was. Only pausing when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Jerking startled, he spun and saw a concerned Ashitaka Inazaka, Kiba's dad, looking at him. Geez Naruto, what happened? Ashitaka knelt down, checking over Naruto given the bandages that had faint red staining from the initial blood from when Tenten wrapped them. The Hokage told me about the Kyuubi, and about my parents. Naruto sunk into himself somewhat. He knew why so many people hated him now. Oh Naruto. Ashitaka pulled him into a hug. No change, no revealed anger about the Kyuubi. Just gentle comfort. Naruto broke, gripping the man's scrubs as he let out the tears he'd been fighting since the reveal. He didn't know how long they stayed like that, how many tears were shed as he poured out his rage and grief. But eventually he found himself moving again, Ashitaka leading him back to the Inazaka compound. Kid. Hearing Sume, Naruto looked up to see his sensei and the woman who had become the closest thing he had to a mother rush over, Kiba and Hana behind her. What happened, Naruto? Kiba noted the bandages instantly, his nose probably smelling the dried blood. Mom said you ran off after you spoke with the Hokage. Seeing them all there, the family who'd found him, Naruto's head dropped once more, shoulders shaking as he mustered up what he could to talk, hoping Kiba and Hana wouldn't think any less of him. The Hokage told me why the village hated me, and why my parents were. Naruto's voice was shaky as he spoke, noting out of the corner of his eye Sume's confused glance with her husband. She hadn't been in the room when the Hokage had revealed anything, having been waiting outside. Apparently, she only knew about the fox in his gut. Naruto, what did he say? Hana asked gently as she crouched down to look him in the eye. On the day I was born, the Kyuubi attacked the village after being pulled out of my mother. Naruto's voice was getting raspy from the tears he'd been shedding, Sume and Ashitaka both going stiff at learning there had been a prior Jinchuriki in the village. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki. But then, my father sealed the Kyuubi into me. But the Kyuubi was defeated. Kiba trailed off, putting two and two together. Sasuke's shoulders were tense as he followed his sensei into the Konoha Shinobi Hospital, the facility designed to focus on treating shinobi and kunoichi rather than civilians. Relax, kid. Sasuke looked over at his sensei, the Jonin putting out his cigarette as they walked through the doors. My test results are in. Sasuke grumbled, his hands feeling twitchy as Asuma signed them in. They know if my Sharingan. Like I said, kid, relax. Asuma paused to give him a grin and a reaffirming shoulder squeeze. Even if you don't have your Sharingan yet, you'll get it, and we still have other things to train on. Either they're ready and we can start working on them, or they're not and we can start making plans about how to wake it up. Stressing out won't change the results, it'll only make your hair fall out sooner. Rolling his eyes at the snarky joke, Sasuke took a deep breath to make himself relax. Yeah, you're right. He pauses. Hey, if dojutsu are supposed to work through chakra circulating through the eyes, do you think Naruto could make a seal to trigger them? That's a hard one. Asuma frowned as they started heading up to the room where the doctor who'd run some tests earlier in the week was waiting. Your dojutsu is different from every other one I've heard of. Yours needs emotion to grow. Running chakra through it, might do nothing, or might cause some serious problems. We can always bring up the idea to some professionals if need be. It was just a thought. Sasuke shrugged, not all that put off by the lack of instant agreement. The two remained in silence until they got to the floor that primarily catered to treating genin. All right, kid, you wait here. Asuma clapped a hand to his shoulder. I'll go make sure the doctor's ready. Grunting in response, Sasuke sat down in one of the empty chairs, having nothing to do but observe the various shinobi and orderlies moving about. Katsuki. One orderly did a double take at their coworker, Sasuke noting he was just out of their line of sight and deciding to try training his eavesdropping. I thought you were supposed to be looking after that Uzumaki brat. Sasuke frowned as he listened in. Naruto had told him and Kiba about how most of the civilians treated him, and he'd even seen it a few times now that he knew to look, but it still baffled him. That new guy offered to take over for me. The uncaring voice of this Katsuki person chuckled before Sasuke heard the sounds of footsteps walking off, so I'm off to go chat up Hinoa in the break room. Wish me luck. New guy. The first voice sounded confused before switching to uncaring. Meh, whatever. Sasuke though got a bad feeling in his gut. Naruto was his friend, even if he refused to ever admit the words out loud. Tossing Asuma's instructions aside, Sasuke silently moved over to the desk, finding the room listings which included where Naruto was. Moving swiftly, he found the isolated room and silently opened the door, seeing a smirking Mizuku pulling down a doctor's mask while drawing a kunai on an unconscious Naruto. Get away from him, Sasuke snarled, feeling his chakra spike alongside his rage. His blood boiled as he leapt towards Mizuki, who leapt out of the way. His rage quickly started to falter though, assaulted by confusion as Mizuki seemed to flicker in and out of existence. As Mizuki and Naruto both fully faded away, Sasuke grit his teeth, feeling his eyes itch. Congrats, kid. Head snapping toward the door, Sasuke saw a smirking Asuma leaning against the frame along with a woman he recognized as Kiba's sensei. After a moment, turning towards a mirror at Asuma's nod, Sasuke saw his reflection bearing bright red Sharingan eyes, each with one tomo. What? Sasuke breathed out, praying to anything that would listen that this wasn't a trick. The doctor came to me yesterday, said your Sharingan were all but developed. Asuma shrugged. Your body wasn't ready to manifest them during the massacre, but the groundwork was laid, they just needed a little push. So, I got Kurenai here to set up a little genjutsu. Since you thought it was real, your emotions were real. Thank you. Sasuke's voice was soft, but thankfully Asuma didn't press the issue. Head over to training ground 3. There's a Jonin who has a transplanted Sharingan from his teammate who's supposed to meet you there today if this worked, and I already sent him word that it did. If he isn't there within half an hour, head to our usual training ground and I'll help you get used to what I can of that. Why wouldn't he be there? Sasuke frowned in confusion even as he shut off his Sharingan. No point in wasting chakra. He's notorious for being late. Asuma scowled. I already made it clear I wouldn't tolerate his usual bullshit here. So do let me know if he tries to blow you off. Asuma's smile was downright vicious. I'd hate him to think me a liar after all. Asuma. Seeing Sasuke head out of the hospital, Asuma turned to Kurenai. Thanks again for helping out here. He gave her a grin as the two set out to meet with the rest of their students for regular training. I didn't trust my genjutsu to work, especially if there was a chance of the kid recognizing my chakra from it. Of course. Kurenai nodded before frowning, although, why do I get the feeling part of you is hoping Kakashi will be late? He tried protesting to the Hokage about not getting to teach either Sasuke or Naruto. Asuma scowled. He wasn't as close to Naruto as his father was, or as close as he'd heard Konohamaru was becoming, but he still liked the kid. Not to mention how much he knew it was eating up at his old man about how Naruto had been distancing him from the Sarutobis since the truth came out. Sasuke, I get. Kakashi does spend more time mourning his team than even reading his porn. Kurenai wrinkled her nose at the mention of the little orange books, but why so upset about Naruto? He's a good kid from what Kiba said, but I don't get why Kakashi would care. Kakashi was the student of the Yondaime. Asuma shrugged, helping with the cover story to hide Naruto's family. He probably sees the kid as his sensei's legacy given the seal. That makes sense. Kurenai nodded. So, how are your other students coming along? Rough. Asuma sighed. Sai has clearly gone through root training but with no proof besides. Just look at him. We can't do jack all to Danzo. Kid has zero emotions he shows at all and doesn't understand how others work or think. I heard that he tried learning how to integrate himself with groups of others by using a book on making friends back at the academy. Not a bad idea. Kurenai frowned, a little weirdly put, but not a bad idea to get help at making friends. He didn't want friends, he wanted to know how to infiltrate and make people see him as a friend. Asuma corrected, but the chapter mentioned friends often give each other nicknames. So, he tried calling two of his classmates an ugly, and was confused when they tried to hit him. Kurenai's face palm was response enough. and please tell me Shikamaru is better. Yes and no. Asuma eagerly lit up another cigarette once they were out of the building, needing the stress relief. He's not as emotionally damaged as Sai, but at least Sai is willing to train and put in effort. I've never met anyone lazier than Shikamaru, and I've barely been able to do anything outside of strength and stamina conditioning for him. He's barely above those fangirl graduates in physical ability, having wanted to bank through on his mind and clever tactics alone. So, I guess me bragging about how eager all three of my students are to grow wouldn't go over well. Kurenai asked with a somewhat playful smirk as he flipped her off. Rude. Guess I'm bragging then. Kurenai chuckled as she continued. Hinata's still on the nervous side, but her teammates have been very encouraging with her, which helps. Shino seems to be determined to think of other things he can learn to complement his clan's bug arts and even ways to recreate other shinobi skills through his bugs. Training them to transmit genjutsu through bite from all the chakra they eat is one I'd never heard of before. And Kiba. Asuma was honestly more intrigued by the feral member of Sasuke's friend group. Trying to learn how to fight smarter, very determined to learn a specific genjutsu without seals, and is always doing what he can to woo Hinata. Kurenai snorted in bemusement. I love the girl like a sister, but she's dense as a rock about that boy's feelings. Did you know he gave her a special book infused with seals for her flower pressing? The thing keeps the flowers preserved, so whenever the page opens, the flower stands up and blooms. She just thought it was a gesture of friendship. Ah, young love. Asuma snickered as the two finally split apart, students to teach. Guy. Frowning, Guy stood alone in the training ground with just Tenten, having sent Lee and Neji home already. Did you have something to talk to me about, Guy-sensei? Tenten asked. She still called him sensei, still listened to him during training, but there was something different about how she interacted with him and Lee recently. She hadn't changed towards Neji, so he knew it wasn't something going on in her life in general, but something specific towards him and his successor for the strong fist. Yes, I wished to know why you've been spending less and less time with your team. Guy frowned as he brought up that point. Up until a week ago, the three would often share the training ground, training, alone but together, in their respective styles well into the evening. They didn't show signs of being the closest friends, but there was a degree of respect and camaraderie there. But for the past week he hadn't seen her doing so once. She even addressed Lee far less than she used to. I've been training with others instead. Tenten answered, answering his question but avoiding the issue. Tenten, why have you been distancing yourself from myself and Lee? Guy pressed the issue with a frown. I'm not sure I can respect you or Lee as much as I used to, sensei. Tenten admitted as Guy gaped floored at the admission. Not since I found out you used your pull as Jonin to have Lee graduate when he wouldn't have otherwise and costing someone else their slot. Hard to trust a teammate as much when they got where they are from nepotism. And how they only have the level they are from all those private lessons I saw you gave him. I mean, I get it, he is your kid. But, well, I can't see things the same now. When he didn't respond, she took that as her cue to leave. It was some time later before he'd regained enough of his shocked mind to speak aloud. She thinks Lee and I are related. Is it the eyebrows? Naruto. Letting out a steady breath, Naruto loosed his arrow, seeing it sail through multiple moving obstacles to hit the training dummy he'd been aiming at. About time you got that shot down. Soom spoke up from behind him as they saw the arrow sink in true. You've been working on that one for a while. It's an important one if I want to be able to use this to take out a target without collateral damage. Naruto shrugged, lowering his bow as he turned to face his sensei, noting all the clones he had scattered throughout the training ground. They were split between studying new seal texts, working on chakra control, or making new seal-infused arrows. Fair enough. Soom shrugged, but you'll get the chance to show me. Your clones have done enough D-rank missions. I got permission to take you on a C rank. Already? Naruto blinked surprised, part of him wondering if this was the Hokage trying to get back into his good graces. Blowing a strand of loose hair from her face, Tenten huffed in boredom. She was watching the shop alone today as her dad recovered from a bug, but she'd barely had a single costumer to occupy her time. Bored. She groaned, slumping down on the counter, pleading with the universe for even a short relief from her current situation. She couldn't even really train properly in here without risking damaging the shop or the merchandise. Sup, Tenten. Hearing the chipper voice of her training buddy, Tenten sat up with a grin. Hey Naruto. She nodded to the blonde, what you in here for? Picking up some supplies. He gave her a nervous grin. Weird, she'd never seen him nervous, only ever cheerful or their talk during his breakdown. D ranks being a pain. She winced, knowing how horrid those were with how long they lasted. If she had to guess, the stress was having him go back into pranking. Actually, I stopped counting D ranks after I did 30 of them. He waved it off as her eyes bulged, the blasé way he said it cluing her in that it wasn't an empty boast. No, this is my first C rank. Well, damn Naruto. Tenten gave him a grin, punching his shoulder playfully, gonna make the rest of us look bad. How the hell did you do so many D ranks so fast anyway? Shadow clones. Naruto shrugged as she blinked in confusion. What clones? Tenten frowned, having never heard of that type of bunshin, just the regular one and the elemental variants. High chakra cost ones that return the memories of the user once they pop. Naruto explained, apparently, I'm one of those people who were born with absurdly high chakra capacities, too high to use the basic bunshin. Kind of like this one missing nin Kisame. Kisame Hoshigake. Tenten knew her eyes were practically sparkling as she got to talk about a holder of one of the coolest swords in the world, the tailed beast without a trail. Weird title aside, he's one of the most powerful swordsmen in the world. But why haven't I heard of more people using this jutsu if it's so useful? There were other students who'd had to work harder to get the clone jutsu down after all. It's in the Forbidden Scroll as a kinjutsu. Naruto's answer made her choke on her own spit. Most people don't even have enough chakra to safely make one outside of a jonin. Although I have heard a few have combined the concept with basic elemental clones to make singular clones that are more durable but still transfer memories. I wish I had someone to teach me that kind of stuff. Tenten sighed. Guy, well, he's Guy. Apart from what you pointed out to me before, I've been thinking more on it, and I don't really think he should have been a Jonin sensei. He'd be great at training a single person in just taijutsu as a master to apprentice relationship, but that's it. He teaches our team, but it's just on taijutsu and stamina conditioning with a bit of pointers for basics for other arts. Apparently, most of the shinobi arts are things he can't physically do or has zero talent in. And he's still trying to claim Lee's not his bastard kid. Naruto raised a skeptical eyebrow in regard to her sensei. He claims the eyebrows are a complete coincidence. Tenten nodded, but I've not found anything that really helps, you know. I'd love to learn medical jutsu or more elemental ones, but I don't have anyone to teach me. Best I could do is keep helping you with your seals. Naruto shrugged, the blonde and her having brainstormed seals together as she saw his natural profanity with the art, but my sis, Hana Inazaka. Tenten repressed a smile at Naruto, almost calling the girl his sister, knowing how close he'd come to the bestial clan, is a vet for the Ninken. She might have advice on basic medical jutsu, and Kiba's dad is a civilian nurse, so you could learn some non-chakra healing stuff from them. I could ask if they'd show you. I'd appreciate it. Tenten gave her friend a warm smile, appreciating what he's willing to do, but anyway, you said you had AC rank, yeah? Bandit elimination. A small group attacking merchants to the capital. Naruto's smile became strained and nervous again. I'm the one who's supposed to take the camp out. My sensei said she'd only step in if the bandits get too close to me, if or when I'm spotted, or if there's a missing nin. Naruto. Tenten's voice softened as she remembered her own first kill. Helping the three of them through it had been one of the few truly good moments Guy had as a sensei. These people are attacking people, killing them. They're preying on the weak and defenseless, so it's no different than putting down a wild animal. Technically it is, as a bandit was worse given that they choose that life. I know. Naruto's hands trembled a bit as he got a few more quivers of arrows, some kunai, and sealing ink up to the counter. I just, what if I freeze? Then you freeze and do better the next time, even if only a little. Tenten's voice was gentle as she rang Naruto up, making sure to keep looking into her friend's eyes. You don't need to be the Hokage right away, Naruto. The journey of 1,000 miles has to begin with a single step. All that matters is that you don't break. Your sensei will be there for you, your friends Kiba and Sasuke will be there for you, and I will too. Tenten wasn't sure why the grateful smile made her stomach flutter, but she pushed it aside. Her friend needed support right now, not confusing feelings. Naruto. Taking in a slow breath, Naruto moved through the trees. He knew Sume Sensei was around, but he had no idea where. After so long of training with him, she'd picked up some of his stealth tricks and now even he couldn't find her if she didn't want to be found. In the small clearing below, he saw a group of bandits. He could count 16 out and about in the camp but was sure there were still more in the tents themselves. Reaching to his quiver, he remembered what rules he'd been given for the mission as he called out the arrow he wanted from the storage seals. Each bandit has to die. Each bandit has to be in good enough shape to have their heads turned in. The camp can't just be blown up or other collateral damage, as Sume wished to investigate it and make sure they aren't working for anyone. And he had to be careful of where he shot and what he shot in case they had innocent people held as slaves or prisoners. No more than a rabid dog. Naruto whispered the advice from Tenten to himself as he drew the string back on his bow, the arrow covered in seals that flowed like wisps of smoke down the shaft. He loosed his shot, taking out a bandit who was isolated as the arrow flew silently, the seals absorbing all sound as it hit the bandit in the jugular. They fell, crying out and clutching their throat where the arrow was stuck, blood gushing out. So much blood, the bandit was so afraid. Naruto forced himself to not think about it, distracting himself by noting that the other bandits didn't seem to hear the commotion or noises from their dying friend. Did his sound nullification arrow spread to those it impaled? He'd have to figure out more later. Drawing out more silence arrows, he took out everyone who was out of sight, noting that each one failed to draw attention with their death cries. Soon enough though, he only had the ones out in the open left. Lowering his old goggles over his eyes, special seals in place on their frames, he drew back a new type of arrow and fired, hitting the one who looked like they were in charge given their placement and focus on a table of maps. When it hit them in the back of their skull, the arrow released a massive burst of blinding light, his goggles protecting him as the bandits all cried out in shock and pain. He rained more and more arrows down, working to eliminate the bandits quickly before they could figure out where the arrows were coming from. Of the 16 that had been there at the beginning, he'd only taken out 11. And more were coming out of the tent, including. His train of thought was cut off by the clap of thunder from a lightning jutsu, the largest tent bursting open as a man with a slashed Kumo headband stepped out. There was a missing nin, and one he recognized. Sume had given his shadow clones several copies of the bingo book to memorize just in case, to know about the various opponents he might run into. This was a B-ranked missing nin, former Jonin of Kumo, Guro Raiden, the Fist of Thunder. He went rogue after trying to stage a coup in Kumo, fleeing and abandoning his allies when it was clear he would fail. The man was blasting killing intent as Naruto choked, not used to feeling the horrible energy as it filled the clearing. He grit his teeth, trying to force his body to move through the killing intent the missing nin was blasting indiscriminately, his own bandits trembling and some even having heart attacks from it. Sume made said efforts needless. The head of the Inazaka surged from the tree line doing the Inazaka, fang over fang, technique, hers so strong it was making a cyclone of wind behind her. Every bandit she passed fell to pieces, quite literally, as her claws cut them to ribbons. He saw his sensei hit the B-ranked missing nin with the power of a rampaging bull, slamming him hard into the ground as the killing intent dissipated from his shock. Sume didn't waste time. She didn't brag, or grandstand, or boast. She just grabbed the stunned criminal's neck and jerked it sharply, snapping the vertebrae as the missing nin who'd frozen him with a single blast of killing intent was eliminated in a moment by his sensei. Naruto. Snapping to attention at his sensei's shout, Naruto looked at where she was staring up at his hiding spot, shadow clones. Sweep the camp and the forest for traps and lingering bandits, go. Doing so instantly, Naruto spammed as many clones as he could, hoping if he focused on a new task, he wouldn't have to think about the blood. Sasuke. Expression blank, Sasuke stood at the back of the room as he observed the three adults in the room. Apparently Kakashi had complained to the Hokage about Asuma sensei burning his collection of porn books for refusing to show up to train Sasuke. I warned you what would happen. Asuma glared, you want to mourn? Do it on your own damn time. It's been years Kakashi, and yet you still do nothing but wallow in pity and self-loathing, screwing with everyone else's lives when they need you to do something. Enough. The tired Hokage raised his voice a hair before Kakashi could respond. Kakashi, I'll have words with Asuma about breaking into your home and destroying your possessions, but he was right to be upset. You had a responsibility and you neglected it. Consider this meeting your last warning. If I don't start seeing improvement, then I'll have to take action. You're dismissed. The two Jonin nodded, albeit reluctantly, and vanished, but Sasuke stayed put. You're still here. The Hokage raised a questioning eyebrow, not scolding but more curious. I had a couple questions. Sasuke stepped forward, you're the only one I can think who'd be able to answer them. Well, I don't have any other meetings for a half hour. The Hokage checked his clock, what are your questions? First, what would I need to do to reclaim my father's seat as the police chief of Konoha? Sasuke tried to straighten his back as he talked about his family's old institution, the shinobi police force, a force he intended to rebuild better than it had ever been. Achieving the rank of Jonin would be best. The Hokage answered easily, prove yourself as a Chunin and I could be convinced to at least let you start rebuilding a proper police force. Nobody would take orders from a genin commissioner seriously. I figured that. Sasuke nodded, and my other question, why do the villagers hate Naruto? Sasuke demanded, feeling his Sharingan bleed red from his budding frustration, he's my companion. He wouldn't admit to the blonde being a friend, and the people of this village, his village, hate him. They spit on him. They continue to betray him. I want to know what the hell gives them the right. You're getting better. Tenten panted, the two of them having been training hard that day given it was Tenten's day off from team training and Sum was handling a clan meeting and couldn't do training that day. Thanks. Naruto gave his friend a grin, gotta do the clan proud, ya know. I'm still just miffed you won't tell me what your sword does. Tenten mock pouted at him, well aware that he'd inscribed seals into his sword. Can't share all my tricks. Naruto grinned cheekily, you still won't tell me what you're trying to do with those giant scrolls I know you've been working on. A girl's gotta have some secrets. Tenten snickered before rushing back in, dancing an intricate dance of blades as the two slashed and parried, dodged and struck. So, Naruto grunted, you ever figure out your elemental affinity? Or are you a lucky little protagonist and have multiple elements? Lightning. Tenten gave an eager grin, I've been trying to find anyone in the village who has the element to see why they can teach me since Guy doesn't really do ninjutsu. I'll ask Sasuke if he has anything in his clan library. Naruto ducked under Tenten's slash before lashing out with a kick, it's how I got the first exercise to controlling my wind nature. Wind huh? Tenten shot forward, going for a big overhead slice, that'll help with cutting. Might want to train lightning too since that'll help with your arrows piercing. Maybe a say ah. Naruto's response was cut off as Tenten caught her slash partway to shoot it back upwards. It grazed him but unfortunately for his bun-haired training partner left her overextended as he managed to disarm her. Damn it. Tenten grumbled, the swallow cut is a pain in the to master. Still useful. Naruto frowned as he thought back to the rapid change in direction of her attack, I'll have to see about getting that one down. Anyway, I was talking about maybe making a seal to generate lightning chakra on my arrowheads for piercing. If I figure it out, I'll show you how to do it for your kunai. And I can show you the swallow cut. Tenten grinned, resting her blunt training sword on her shoulder. All right, get ready to sweat, rookie. Tenten sensei takes no prisoners. Sasuke. Expression pinched, Sasuke walked to his team's training ground, ignoring the brainless sycophants trying to catch his attention as he walked. Every day he'd been visiting the shinobi hospital to watch the doctors as they did their work. He'd been studying the journals of past Sharingan users and found his eye's perception was far above what the normal was. There were even claims that others with that level of perception could see onto the cellular level. Deciding to take that and learn an art he saw next to no record of in the Uchiha library, Sasuke started studying with the medic nin to improve what he could do. Getting to the training ground, Sasuke ignored the snoring Shikamaru and the meditating Sai. Moving over to the sandbags, Sasuke grit his teeth as he began training his forms on them, working out the frustration he'd been feeling ever since his conversation with the Hokage. Non-answers. Dismissal. The Hokage had brushed it off, acting like hatred was an exaggeration. Not my place. Sasuke grit his teeth as he threw a hard punch into the bag, feeling the sting on his knuckles as he continued to throw punch after punch. Just focus on being a friend and don't pay the villagers mind. Before he could throw another punch, he found his wrist caught by Asuma. There are better ways to burn a frustration, kid. The chain-smoking Jonin sighed, removing his cigarette to put it out. I heard about your talk with my old man. Gonna tell me to drop it too? Sasuke scowled. No. Asuma shook his head as Sasuke felt a glimmer of relief that his sensei wouldn't act like the Hokage. Now don't get me wrong, I get why my dad said what he did. I don't agree with it. Asuma held up a hand before Sasuke could retort, just that I understand it. My dad retired as third a long time ago for a reason. He's tired and makes mistakes. Often when he tries to fix them, he overcorrects. The problem is that most of the candidates that could become the fifth Hokage would either make things worse or lack some crucial trait needed. No, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. The Hokage won't tell you what you want to know. There are laws preventing almost anyone else from filling you in. So go ask the source. Naruto. Sasuke pieced it together even if he felt nervous at the idea. He still couldn't, admit to anyone that Naruto was his friend. Not even himself. But later. Asuma shook his head before giving a sharp whistle as the Shikamaru was startled awake and Sai roused from his meditation. Alright you three, I've got good news. Asuma grinned, you three have all grown lately. Sasuke, I've heard about your training at the hospital. Sai, you're getting better at interacting with people without putting them on edge. And Shikamaru, you're less of a pathetic little noodle. The tired genius flipped the smirking man off. Pair that with improved teamwork I got you all a treat. Asuma pulled out a mission scroll that Sasuke noticed at a glance, your first C rank. We leave in an hour to escort a bridge builder back to his home in Wave. Get your gear and meet me at the main gate. Yawning with a stretch, Naruto trudged through the village to look for a snack to eat. Sum had given him the day off from training and Tenten was out on a mission, so there wasn't much to do at the moment besides quell the munchies. Naruto. Jerking, Naruto's head snapped over to see Sum running over. We have an emergency mission. You have your gear. Unsealing the mission pack that he kept sealed on him at all times, Naruto nodded as Sum turned and bolted. Giving chase, Naruto kept up with Sum and Kuromaru. What happened? Naruto got out as he ran, making sure his blade and bow were ready. Asuma sent a request for backup. Sum narrowed her eyes as they ran. His team were on a basic C rank that was supposed to be a simple escort mission with no threat larger than some bandits or wolves. Instead, their group got attacked by a couple of B-ranked missing nin, the Demon Brothers of Mist. They're working for a shipping tycoon who's trying to take over Wave Country. That shouldn't have been a C rank. Naruto frowned, getting a bad feeling as he started prepping his quiver with sealed arrows. No, it shouldn't. Sum shook her head, but the demon brothers aren't known to have worked with anyone else, so at the moment it was deemed safe enough to continue escorting the client back to his home. The backup is case more enemy nin are hired on. I'm a high A rank kunoichi and Asuma is on the lower end of S rank after his time guarding the daimyo. With us, and your 4 genin, we should be able to handle most opponents. Understood. Naruto nodded, readying himself for battle. The report said that there shouldn't be any current issue, but he had a bad feeling in his gut. Zabuza. Frowning, Zabuza observed the genin on the banks of the lake. He had Asuma Sarutobi trapped in a water prison and had assumed a single water clone would be enough to kill the 3 genin. Instead, 2 of them moved faster than a genin should and took it down. Water clones were useful and cheap to make when it comes to chakra consumption, but they were also sadly never more than 1/10 the power of their creator, plus a solid enough hit would make them dissolve. Gotta say, I expected more from one of the daimyo's fire guardians. Zabuza snorted, you fought me in my element. But I suppose that's the issue with you Leaf Nin. You're only good when you have a team. As he spoke, he watched his group of 3 water clones having some fun toying with the genin, testing what the current brats of the world, strongest shinobi village, were capable of. Hearing a faint whistle, Zabuza looked up to see an arrow flying overhead before it burst into smoke to reveal a tiny blonde brat. What the? Zabuza was caught off guard for only a moment, but in that moment the blonde used a substitution to replace themselves with Asuma, who appeared in mid-air before vanishing again to be replaced with another blonde, both of them clones judging by his senses. Killing the 2 clones with a swing of his sword, Zabuza was already moving towards the shore where he saw more blondes appearing, the group he was fighting and his target being brought further back. Shadow Arrow Jutsu. The clones shouted in tandem as a volley of arrows became a rain. Iron Water Wall. Zabuza scowled, using a single-handed hand sign to make a water barrier, the arrows sticking in as his clones burst. Good work Naruto. A feral woman he recognized as an Inazaka by the markings, and Wolf grinned, stay back and provide cover fire. Asuma and I will handle him from here. Yes sensei. The blonde kid, Naruto, nodded, forming more clones who surrounded the target with the other genin, each clone having a bow ready and aimed outward. Huh, more leaves to burn. Zabuza scoffed, cracking his neck as he worked to not show any concern at facing 2 high-ranked jonin. Asuma was ranked roughly equal to him in the bingo book, so Asuma with backup could pose a problem. Like we did at Scorched Canyon. Soom shouted at Asuma as the 2 jonin charged, the massive wolf staying with the genin as extra security. It didn't take long for Zabuza to recognize that the current fight wasn't one he'd win. He was still tired from being on the run for so long, and now the 2 jonin were able to back each other up. Sending a silent signal to Haku, Zabuza was getting ready for the senbon to the neck when he heard his partner cry out in pain. Damn it! Zabuza snarled, sending out a tidal wave that bought him just enough room to leap to where Haku was, swinging his blade as he beheaded what looked like a tiger made of ink, rushing the mauled Haku out. He'd ensure Haku recovered, then take this group down on his terms. Guy. Frowning, Guy observed his team as the 3 worked to take down their targets on the latest bandit elimination mission. On past missions of this type the 3 had decent teamwork where Neji took charge, calling out orders on where various bandits were or were going, taking full advantage of his Byakugan as he waded to the center of it all, drawing the most attackers. Tenten would have been rapidly circling the outside, throwing her kunai and using her weapons to make sure no bandits escaped the camp. While Lee would bounce from opponent to opponent, breaking those who faced him and hurting the rest towards Neji. It was a well-oiled machine where the teamwork worked flawlessly. Even when the team wasn't on the best terms, there was at least a degree of respect there for the most part. But now they each focused on their own actions. Tenten didn't seem as comfortable working with Lee, and if both of them weren't following his orders to the letter, Neji's teamwork became non-existent. The bandits were still getting taken out, but the teamwork that Konoha prided itself on wasn't there anymore. And Guy wasn't sure what to do about it. Naruto. Grunting, Naruto helped ease the bridge builder Tazuna into a chair. To help avoid any more attacks, Asuma and Sume had given the order to speed things up. Naruto had been tasked with carrying the old man while his clones had bows ready, and a clone of Sume carried Shikamaru, who still wasn't fit enough to do prolonged water walking at the speeds they needed to travel. He secure. Sume check into the room where Naruto was laying down the old man, the civilian having passed out from the intensity of the fight in the run that followed. Yeah, he's good. Naruto nodded. Smells like a distillery, but he's good. I've got clones setting up traps and seals around the property for now. Good work, kid. Sume gave him a relieved nod before running a hand back through her hair with a sigh. This mission went south fast. You handled yourself good out there, kid. I can't tell you how many rookies I know of from my own friggin' clan would have tried arguing, wanting to fight Zabuza for some sort of glory. He's an S-ranked missing non. Not some chump who's someone off to become Chunin. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'd rather not get murdered, thank you. Good. I'm going to go meet with Asuma so we can make a plan on how to handle this cluster. You and the other genin meet up. Check what's on hand and see if you have any seals that can boost their gear. This is an all-hands-on-deck scenario till I say otherwise, got it? Alright, let's take stock of the situation. Asuma's side as the 6 trained ninja sat at the table of the bridge builder's home, the 3 civilians all asleep. Naruto, you told Sume that you were setting up traps and seals, yes? Yeah. Naruto nodded, pulling out a map his clones had made of the area surrounding the house. I've been having my clones setting it up. I made a map of what traps are where plus an exit key. He slid the 2 items to the pair of Jonin. They key wills turn off the traps and needs chakra from whoever gets keyed to it to work. Naruto showed how to bond Asuma and Sume to the key so only they could let people in or out of the area surrounding the house. Good work, kid. Sume nodded, ruffling Naruto's head with a grin. This'll help keep this place secure. Would the traps stop an S-ranked ninja? Sasuke frowned. I know your seals are good, Naruto, but this isn't some genin or a nepotistic Chunin. I didn't leave any gaps. Naruto shook his head. If there's one thing I know better than my seals or bow, it's infiltration. You saw me pranking the Anbu for years, outrunning them for years. Nobody ever noticed me till I let them, remember. There are enough traps that he won't be able to get through without setting them off. Could he force his way through? Yes. But it would be messy and loud. It would draw attention and give us time to fight back. He already saw that he was outmatched in a straight fight against Asuma and Sume sensei. His best shot is assassination, right? He looked at the 2 Jonin who nodded with a frown. Yes, but unfortunately that's his best field. Asuma tossed his team a bingo book so they could read Zabuza's entry. Naruto, could you make some scrolls that can store clones for an indefinite period? I could probably make some that could hold a clone for a day. 2 tops. Naruto shook his head. Why? Currently we need to guard both Tazuna and his family. Asuma explained. Sume and I will go with Tazuna to the bridge each day and take 2 of you a day to help guard and oversee some training at the same time. The other 2 will stay here and guard them, escorting them out as needed since I'm quite sure Naruto has another key somewhere or could make one. So, you want us to have those clones on hand to help in case Zabuza shows up. Gives us time to get the civilians back paw the traps and would draw enough attention for the real you to get over to the fight. Sasuke sums up with a nod. Exactly. Asuma nods before frowning, and I have an extra job for you, Naruto. Are your clones at any rate? Me. Naruto blinked in surprise, the other genin doing the same. Yes, you. Sume nodded, picking up where Asuma left off. You can make solid clones despite being a genin and have good stealth and ranged weapons training. Currently this city is drying, there's no hope, which means people aren't going to be very cooperative. I want your clones to go out into the woods beyond the village to hunt and pick medical herbs. Don't overharvest, but bringing those back to town will help give these people some hope. I do not believe it would be that easy to change the world view of a defeated city. Sai protested the idea. Kid, You'd be amazed how much brighter the world looks when you get your first full meal and medicine in who knows how long. Asuma shook his head. Sometimes you just need that little spark to start something bigger. On it, Asuma sensei. Naruto nodded, making a handful of shadow clones that grabbed some ceiling scrolls and set off. I'll have them each go to different areas so it's more spread out. Good man. Asuma nodded. This is a serious mission now and one we can't afford to leave. Gato is someone who would gladly work with Konoha's enemies, and it could end up making Wave a staging ground for attacks on our village if we just leave things be. Getting word back to Konoha will be tricky now as well. I'll try, but it's highly likely that backup won't be coming. So, who's going to the bridge tomorrow? Sasuke asked with a frown. Shikamaru and Sai will be. Asuma decided. Sasuke, I know you copied the basics of each elemental transformation from me. When I want you to help the others get some elemental transformation down. Naruto, you're to keep seal upgrading everyone's gear and making things like explosive seals. Sai, have your ink creatures do patrols. Shikamaru, you still need to work on your reserves. Shikamaru's groan went ignored. Zabuza, frowning. Zabuza finished washing out Haku's wounds, ink from that tiger having gotten inside the lacerations. Root. Zabuza frowned as he thought back to the genin he'd observed. The one with the ink brushes, and who had to have created the ink tiger that mauled Haku, had screamed of the infamous root organization of Konoha. An organization that was, supposedly, disbanded years ago. That doesn't matter. Zabuza shook his head as he looked about the new bolt hole he'd stashed Haku in to recover. It was a simple manner to have a pair of water clones, one hang to look like Haku, be holed up in their old safe house to distract Gato. Little pissant. Zabuza scowled, remembering the feedback from his clones who'd dealt with the annoying midget. How Gato had threatened to just turn them in for the bounty rather than paying him, not seeming to care about the notion of Konoha getting involved. I need to get this done fast. Zabuza scowled, sealing Kubikirihocho away and leaving a clone to watch over Haku. He needed the bridge builder dead, but first he needed Haku back in fighting shape. Looking in the mirror, he took off his bandages and put in some fake teeth atop his own to hide their shark-like edges. Baggy clothes to hide his physique and a bit of carefully applies makeup to alter his features somewhat. Lastly, a seal applied to help conceal his chakra. That'll work. Zabuza nodded, slipping out with just a kunai for protection for now. He was the assassin of the Seven Swordsmen, but nobody ever took the chance to stop and think about how a giant man with a zanbato would go unnoticed. There should be a field of medical herbs to the south. Zabuza nodded, moving careful to avoid seeming like a shinobi. Speed was important, but precision even more so. Anko, I don't know what I've been told. Anko barked at her three genin as she continued to work them into the dirt. So far the three hadn't even taken so much as a single D-rank mission, having focused the entirety of their time on getting them up to snuff rather than doing basic chores. Choji had, thankfully, been the easiest to work with. Without easy access to Shikamaru to encourage bad lazy habits, the boy had listened to her. The fact that she'd told his parents and Inos about what she was doing probably helped, as the actual shinobi would be on her side about this. Currently Choji was only panting slightly, and she felt he was actually ready to try a basic C rank, if it weren't for his teammates. Ino had apparently tried whining to her parents after the first few days and gotten a lecture similar to what Anko had given her. Thankfully their lecture, plus some manipulation from the girl's father, helped light a fire under the girls. That the fire was to get strong and get thick, for Sasuke-kun, made her want to hurl, but she'd take what she could get for now and work on that fangirling once the girl wasn't liable to die the second that they set foot out of the village. Sakura on the other hand didn't have any shinobi relatives to back up Anko's words and didn't see instant results on her figure by not dieting, so she was being stubborn. Unfortunately for the Pinkett, Anko gave absolutely 0s and kept making the girl train till she dropped. I can't hear you maggots. Anko shouted out when the trio didn't answer back. I don't know what I've been told. The three got out, some louder than others. I can't hear you, Anko barked. I don't know what I've been told. The trio managed to shout this time as Anko cackled. Damn right you don't. She gave a double clap to let the trio know to take one more cooldown walking lap before falling back in. The trio slumped in relief. The leaves they'd been forced to stick all over their body for chakra training while they ran falling to the ground limply. All right you three. Once you're done with that cooldown lap, I'm going to let you go early. Anko nodded. I'm going to look for a mission to take you three on. The three perked up. So, you think we're ready? Ino looked hopeful. Splattered blood from something or someone getting killed. And the lingering presence of chakra in the air from someone doing jutsu. The only question he had was if it was from the Konoha group or someone else. He wasn't aware of any other shinobi in the area, but there were others with access to chakra. Bounty hunters and even the occasional ronin or monk. Stepping into a clearing where he hoped to find some herbs to fight infection, not liking the thought of ink in Haku's bloodstream, he saw the blonde archer brat. Or a clone at least. His skills at a sensor were something he'd spent years refining to better his silent killing methods while in the hidden mist, and he'd gotten to the point that he could tell a clone from a regular shinobi with ease. The solid clone, a surprising feat for a genin, was busy dressing and harvesting a deer, probably the source of the blood he'd seen earlier. Quite the catch, young hunter. Zabuza smiled, putting on a friendly and approaching air, the kid giving him a bashful grin, having clearly heard his footsteps. Thanks. The blonde smiled at him, not an ounce of suspicion in his eyes. Or if there was, it was better hidden than Zabuza was used to seeing. Although I have to ask what a kid is doing out here alone. Zabuza put on a concerned mask. Killing a clone wouldn't do anything to help his mission and would just put his enemies more on edge. It did present an opportunity to gather intel though. I hear there's a bandit king who took over the only village in the area. Are you trying to flee Wave? I'm going to save it. The kid's expression was determined, Zabuza able to see an iron will at this genin's core. You seem a little young to be a war hero, kid. Zabuza frowned, still not a fan of how young genin were sent out to kill and die. He was a monster himself, but that was out of necessity, his emotions deadened out of necessity. His village was wasting both lives and resources with their old system of having graduates fight to the death for the right to a headband. Years of effort and training that had been spent on the dead wasted. So, he trained on his own in secret, picked the most vile graduating class he could, and slaughtered them all to prove a point. And he'd gotten the change he'd wanted. He'd climbed the ranks by throwing himself into training, using brutal methods to prove his points until he'd been seen as the one of the Mist's strongest. One of the Mist's most ruthless. He saw what he wanted changed and made a point to get things changed. Eventually though, Mist and its cage reached a new level of problematic. Bloodline purges would do nothing but serve to weaken the village, threatening its very existence. His coup had been to stop that before the village could be lost completely. It was the first time his methods had failed him, as he'd been forced to flee in disgrace. Finding Haku had been the one benefit of this, an apprentice he could train to carry on his work. A legacy to leave behind. Mist was lost and there was no stopping that. Even if those rebels won, their forces were too small to still be counted as a major village at the end. Same was true for the bloodline purgers. He needed this payday to ensure his new dream would succeed. Quite the promise, kid. Zabuza shook his head. Sounds like a dangerous goal. I've been avoiding Gato and Wave for a reason. I'm not alone. The kid looked determined, even as he finished getting out the meat from the deer along with the hide, sealing those and the waste away separately. So, you've got more hunters with you. Zabuza continued to play dumb, noting the clone wasn't wearing a headband. Probably avoiding reflective metals if they were out hunting. Something like that. The kid gave him a cheeky grin, not being as easy to pry intel from as he'd hoped, but did you need something? Got a friend who hurt himself. I'm gathering some herbs so that his injury doesn't get infected. Zabuza rolled his eyes, feigning exasperation. I swear that idiot is more danger prone than a shinobi. The kid snorted bemused, marking one of the rare few times someone found him funny. Well, I saw some fire root by the river over there. The kid pointed with the knife he'd been using to carve up the deer before working on cleaning the blade. I got some, but there's still plenty. Thanks, kid. Zabuza nodded, giving a friendly grin as the kid set off. Stay safe out there. As the kid left, Zabuza made sure to carefully keep up his mask, not wanting to let it slip now that he knew someone else was in the area. Still, the fact that the kid was out collecting meat, leather, and medicinal herbs. He guessed they were trying to bolster the spirits of the people in Wave. It was a good plan to fight against Dato's methods, especially since Gato would be more careful about having his thugs try anything violent in town until the Konoha shinobi were dead. And if the kid was working to fix things at the town, one day's worth of hunting wouldn't be anywhere near enough. Looks like he'd be out hunting while Haku recovered then. Frowning, Guy looked back through the mission reports he'd filed on the last dozen missions he'd taken with his team. The issues with them were steadily growing worse and he was desperate for a solution. Neji was even more waspish than before. Lee was running himself ragged trying to get Tenten's acknowledgement. And the markswoman of the group herself was distancing herself more and more. He'd even learned that she was often being seen training with the Uzumaki boy. I suppose that's what she meant by costing someone their slot. He mused aloud with a frown, even as he remembered what had been revealed about the academy. How its teachers were refusing to pointedly teach. And it wasn't like he'd demanded they fail the Uzumaki kid, he'd just requested that they have graduate regardless of the lack of jutsu issue, that he'd be requesting the Hokage place the boy on his team. That wasn't something Lee could control, and Jonin were allowed to make requests on who was in their teams. So how do I fix this? Guy frowned, trying to recapture the spark of a well-oiled machine his team had been before. Especially as the Chunin exams were coming up, a competition he'd already given his word to the three that they'd be entered into. Wait, I got it. Guy beamed happily as an idea struck him like a bolt of lightning. Putting away the reports from the old missions, Guy rushed over to the mission selection office, entering to browse what was available. This is perfect. Guy grinned as he found one that hadn't been taken yet. It was a week-long escort mission, seeing a traveling merchant to the border of the land of Waterfalls to the north, where they'd swap this merchant band over to a team from Waterfall, collecting the team they'd be escorting back to Konoha. It was long enough that the group couldn't just get done and go home, like a basic bandit elimination job, and with his planned addendum, it should fix everything. He'd put Lee in charge of the three during the mission. Neji would learn how to take orders from his fellows and that he didn't always have to be the one giving out commands. Things had started rocky, as he had expected them to. Lee had been excited, throwing his hands up with a "Yush" and a declaration that if he could not lead his team properly, then he would do 100 laps around Konoha upon their return. Tenten had a stoic blank expression that was clearly hiding displeasure, and likely more thoughts of nepotism. Neji had just been scowling, shooting furious looks between Lee and himself. Instead of Neji and Tenten seeing Lee doing his best at efficiently leading his team, and thereby gaining respect for their comrade, things had only deteriorated further from there. Lee was trying his best, but it seemed that with trying to get Lee's taijutsu skill up to par, he'd neglected his pupil's tactical ability. Lee knew where he'd at least be useful, and he knew enough about taijutsu to place Neji. But his knowledge of where Tenten would best be placed was clearly lacking. He'd started by having her take point, saying if she had good eyes from her weapons training then she could scout ahead. Not realizing that Tenten worked best at accuracy over certain distances and would have been better at the back to cover them, while Neji took point with his Byakugan for reconnaissance. He could tell Lee consistently wanted to charge after any hint of a threat to fight them himself, leaving the others to guard the caravan, not processing that as temporary team leader he needed to stay and coordinate. For the past 3 days things had been growing more tense rather than less, as he'd hoped. The second they got to the border village and deposited the group they'd escorted, their return group not set to arrive till the next day, Neji and Tenten spread out through the village to get away from Lee. Maybe I should have had them take turns being in charge of D ranks or war games against other teams. Guy slumped, his brilliant plan proving to be far less brilliant than he'd hoped. Haku. Sitting up in bed, Haku grimaced as he felt his healing wounds protest. Zabuza's knowledge of healing jutsu was minimal at best, so they were mostly having to get by on medicinal herbs and those limited medical jutsu to get Haku back to fighting shape. Easy, Haku. Zabuza's expression was stern. Haku knew it was not out of concern, he was still only a tool. If anything, it would just be worry about Haku making his injuries worse when he still had use for this current mission. Those are already going to scar. The last thing we need right now is them opening up again. Yes, Zabuza-sama. Haku bowed his head in deference to his savior, sipping at the warm broth filled with meat and herbs to help his recovery. I should be back to fighting strength by the end of the week. Good. Zabuza nodded, sharpening Kubikiri-hocho as they spoke. I don't see any signs from the kid that the Konoha nin are accelerating their plans, so this should work well. Ah yes, Naruto Uzumaki, the genin that Zabuza-sama had informed him of. Over the past 4 days, Zabuza had been going out to gather herbs and medicine, accidentally, running into Naruto while gathering food and such each time. Or a clone at any rate. Zabuza-sama had, at first, stated it was just an attempt to gather information. Then he'd bandied out the idea of trying to take the kid with them. That Naruto Uzumaki could be of use for the dream Zabuza-sama had told him of. But Haku could tell that, even if Zabuza-sama refused to admit it to himself, that the demon of the bloody mist was growing attached to the enemy genin. Zabuza had spoken well of the determination he saw in the blonde genin. Of the potential given what he saw in that first fight. Haku knew Zabuza wished to take the foreign genin with them once the bridge builder was dead, and Haku would do all he could to ensure this happened. Zabuza-sama deserved more companion than a simple discardable tool. Naruto. I'm back. Naruto stretched with a yawn as he entered the house, dropped off the meat and herbs at the usual spots. Good work, Squirt. Tsume grinned at him, ruffling his hair even as he failed at stopping her. Any signs of Zabuza or their accomplice? Asuma looked over from where he was helping the others with a chakra control exercise. None. Naruto frowned, seen a couple wandering merchants. A few hunters. Even some of Gato's thugs that I dealt with. He grimaced, still not fully comfortable with killing bandits and other scum even if he knew it was the best course of action. He gave Tsume an appreciative nod when she squeezed his shoulder comfortingly. Still, best be cautious. Asuma frowned, stroking his beard in contemplation. Who knows if we took out his accomplice or if he has others. Not to mention Zabuza himself is no slouch. Before Naruto, or any of the others, could respond they were cut off by Inari, the grandson of their client who'd not said a word to them the entire time they'd been in wave. Keeping any interactions to scowls or huffs. Just shut up already. Inari snapped, fists balled as he yelled at them, why do you even bother when Gato's just going to kill you anyway? Gato's no match for a shinobi kid. Asuma shook his head, his guard Zabuza. That's a threat but one we already sent running. We've got this handled. Yeah right. Inari was near spitting now. No matter how hard you train or what big claims you make, you're still no match for Gato's men. The weak only end up getting killed. You're just going to make us suffer more from Gato. You stupid ninja from your pampered village. I bet you haven't had to suffer or struggle a day in your entire life. Any further ranting from Inari was cut off as by the sound of the wood table splintering under Naruto's grip, and the glass in Sasuke's hands shattering. Don't know about suffering. Naruto felt burning rage bubbling up in his gut. Sasuke was breathing heavily, working to control his own temper even as his Sharingan flickered on and off. He felt Tsume trying to calm him down, but his blood was boiling in his ears. Do you have a mother? Naruto's tone was cold as he stared down at a now shaking Inari. Do you have a grandfather? Why you know I do, you stupid. Inari tried to get his courage back before Naruto slapped a palm down hard on the table. Then you still have more than Sasuke. More than me. Naruto snarled. He had to watch as his family were killed in front of him. I lost mine the day I was born. I have been beaten. I have been robbed. I have been betrayed. But I've kept going. I didn't curl up and start whining like you. Naruto felt his breaths becoming ragged, his fury rising up far faster than it should have. Needed to get away from this, he stormed out of the house before the others could stop him, slipping through the traps as he ran into the dark woods. He needed to get away. Sume. Naruto. Sume shot to her feet to give chase once she processed what had just happened, only stopping when Asuma put a hand on her shoulder. You won't catch him, Sume. Asuma scowled. By the time you got the key to get past the traps, he'd have a solid lead. Given his skill at stealth and how much of the forest he's learned, then none of us would find him until he's ready to be found. Give him a bit to cool off, then go. As he spoke, she felt him subtly tapping a coded message on her shoulder. Saw eyes starting to turn red. Kyuubi might have been trying to break through. I think he's trying to calm down safely. Follow and observe carefully. Fine. She scowled, not wanting to let the boy who was essentially her second son suffer this alone. Leaving the still furious, but also now confused, Sasuke to be helped by his team, Sume ran upstairs to get the key to get past the traps, noting Inari was being comforted and chastised by his mother as she ran out into the night after her boy. Zabuza. The hell? Zabuza looked about the ruined clearing in confusion, wanting to find some wild boar to make one of Haku's favorite dishes. The tracks he'd been following led here, but there was no sign of the trail left. He saw deep furrows dug into the ground, trees shattered, rocks smashed. Added to that, the area looked scorched, for lack of a better word. But clearly not by fire. There was no soot nor smell of smoke. At the center of it all, though, was Naruto. The blonde, and he could tell this was the true genin, was laying passed out in the clearing. Hey, kid. Zabuza carefully shook the genin awake. Kid, you shouldn't be sleeping out here. He was carefully keeping track of what was around him as he woke the genin up, but sensed no trace of the kid's team or sensei. Wah! Naruto sat up, rubbing his eyes blearily. Where? As the kid spoke, he blinked rapidly, eyes regaining focus and clarity. Sume sensei's gonna kill me. Naruto groaned, slamming his head back against a tree. Oh. Zabuza raised an eyebrow, wondering if he'd get some useful new intel. Got into an argument with someone last night. Naruto admitted, seeming tense even as he spoke. Zabuza figured the kid was trying to keep certain bits private but wanted someone safe to vent to. Yeah, that happens when you get people together. They argue. Zabuza shrugged. It's human nature to fight. To disagree. But people work together regardless. Naruto pushed back, the kid still having a spark of hope in him. The shinobi world was a cruel one to those who still had that spark. Maybe. Zabuza shrugged, avoiding a new argument. So you came out here to cool off? Yeah. Naruto kicked the dirt, twirling a stick between his fingers. A nervous tick possibly. He'd noticed how high energy the kid was. You should get back to them, kid. Zabuza shook his head. They're probably worried and you need to rest somewhere that's not half rubble. I know. Naruto slumped, clearly dreading the coming conversation.